All right, friends, welcome. It is week 3, lecture 2, meaning that we've only got 4 lectures left after today, and then this class is over. You are already moving on. How wild and how fun. Just a little bit of housekeeping as always. You got some discussion questions due Sunday. Now, this week's is open and next week's are already open. So if I were you, especially if you've already taken your exam and passed it, go knock out those discussion questions, because it would be so good to make sure everything is done by this weekend and the next week is just some reprieve, especially if you're coming from programming basics and you've been kind of going for the last 6 weeks or last, I guess now 5 weeks. If you finish everything, the discussion questions for next week are open. So if you knock it all out, then you can kind of have a week of coming to lecture or not if you choose not to. But just kind of a week to chill before you jump into your next stack, because your next area, and we're going to talk about that in a second, is your full-time stacks. And so we want to make sure that you are well rested and prepared for that. You only have one assignment due this week, and it's called core assignment, that's called Push to GitHub. We're going to learn about GitHub today. We're going to push we can. I think today's lecture, don't anticipate it going the full time, but wanted to give a little bit of time in case there's some problem solving or solution building that we need to do. I'm going to show you how to push to GitHub. There's a couple things you're going to have to do, and so want to make sure that you do that, so that way you're ready for your core assignment. Build exam grading. All the exams that are turned in at this moment, I will make sure that I finish. There's only a couple left. I'll make sure that I finish tonight. So by tonight after lecture, I will grade your exams. And then everybody that has turned in an exam will know whether they need a retake or not. And again, if you need a retake, I will give you what you did and what you could have improved on. And then at the end of it, I will put, hey, this is your next code for your exam. Which kind of leads us into next week and end of stack. As you know, cool. We're here, right, for this push to GitHub. This is our assignment. That's what we're going over today. We talked about in office hour, we talked about some cool terminal stuff that you can do. But it's just all added. So if you haven't done your exam, don't worry about it. It doesn't do anything for your exam. It won't help you. So just make sure that you are only focusing on your exam. And then today we're going to talk about Git and GitHub. And then tomorrow, I think we're going to talk about scope and just kind of dive into JavaScript a little bit more. Now, these next classes are just kind of up to you. Doesn't matter what you guys want. So we can do sort of anything you guys want. If you want to talk about scope in JavaScript, tomorrow we'll talk about scope in JavaScript and what that means, because I do think it's important to know, especially if we're going to go to MERN. But next week is sort of I usually like to do a lighter week. Like I'll probably teach you Bootstrap on one of these. So Bootstrap right here, maybe and media queries, or we can just really do an entire class on Bootstrap. I think it's a good tool to learn and use. But if there's anything specifically you would like for me to go over that maybe you read in the advanced portion and you don't really know how to do that, or you don't, or you just want to learn more about JavaScript or something, just let me know. Obviously, ample time. Like if you tell me at the day of and be like, hey, can you teach us this today? Not really. I'd like to be prepared and make sure that you guys know, I know what I'm teaching and are prepared for that. But if you do have any requests by the end of the week, if you just reach out to me, that would be helpful, and I can try to build that into next week. Because again, it's pretty freeing. Usually these 2 days are very stressful, if I'm just being blatantly honest. So I try to not do a ton of new information to you, because this is the last day to start an exam. And then on this Tuesday, you are officially 24 hours out from everything being due. So I try to, again, make things very, very, very chill, especially for those that are trying to figure out or trying to get an exam in and passing. Now, I just want to remind you, in order for you to move forward, there are quite a few things that you need to have. So I'm going to go to Web Fundamentals. This is on the platform just to show you kind of stack orientation. It's the very beginning. Still think about the early beginning of this. where we talk about course requirements. So graduation requirements, we absolutely, these are full-time programs, right? So you don't have to worry about that. This is part-time. So in order for you to fully graduate, you need to have a web fundamentals belt, meaning that you have to pass the exam in order to even move forward. Don't even worry about graduation, but you've got to, you have to pass the belt exam in order to move forward from this stack as well. You can miss a maximum, because this is a 4-week course. Programming Basics was a 2-week, and then your full language programs are going to be 8 weeks. Because this is a 4-week course, you can only miss a maximum of 2 discussion questions. Now, if you let's say you've already missed 2, you missed last week, and you don't do just one of the discussion questions this week or next week, you will have to retake the course. There's nothing I can do about that. I wish that wasn't a thing, but you will have to retake it. So please, 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 please make sure you do your discussion questions. This week and next week is open. So please, please, please make sure you are, just go knock those out like right now. Go knock those out, because I would hate for you, even if you've got a passing belt exam and you've got a 90%, the last thing is you have to complete 90% of your core assignments. Even if you have both of those things, you passed the test, you've done the assignments, but you didn't do your measly little discussion questions, you still have to retake. A retake is $500. So it's not free. It's not something we just add in. You can keep retaking. It's $500. So please, please, please make sure that you are doing all 3 things. That's kind of the trifecta, right? In order for you to pass, you have to have 90% of all core assignments. So if we're looking at this guy, you've got to have 90% of these done, meaning that you can only miss 1. So if you don't do push to GitHub, that means you have to do all 6. So you have to have 6 out of 7 core assignments done and completed and turned in. First and foremost, 6 out of 7. You have to have 6 out of 8 discussion questions done, because you can only miss 2. And you have to have a passing belt exam. If you have all 3 of those things, then you're good to go. If you've already taken the belt exam and you've already turned in 6 out of 7 assignments, and you've done all your discussion questions, then you are officially finished with this stack. From the requirement side, obviously still come to class if you want. Obviously, these are optional, but from a requirements standpoint, that is what is due: a passing belt exam, 90% core assignments, which is 6 out of 7 core assignments completed. That might not be exactly 90%, but we give or take 1 for that. And then you can miss a maximum of 2 discussion questions. So you have to have 6 out of 8. Now remember, you cannot retroactively go do discussion questions. So if you missed 2 in week 2, you can't miss any more. If you miss any more, then you will have to retake, and it's $500. It has to be all 3 of those are complete, or else you have to retake. Now, just as a reminder, week 4 is a little weird. You do not have until Sunday to do your everything, to do your core assignments and to do your discussion questions. You have until Wednesday of next week. So exactly 1 week from today, that end of day is when everything is due. Week 4 discussion questions are due. All your core assignments, or 90% of them, are due, and a passing belt exam is due. If any 3 of those, or if any one of those 3 things is not complete, then you will have to retake. I know I've said that a million times. I just want to make it as clear as possible. Are there any questions on what is expected from you guys end of week next week?
I have a quick question.
Mm-hmm.
So, I know that there is a drop dead deadline with regards to the discussion questions, i.e. being Sunday night.
Uh-huh.
For the core assignments, as long as all the core assignments are due by Wednesday, 7/26, we should be good, correct? Or at least 90%.
Yeah. So discussion questions are the only thing that in reality is like you can't retroactively go do. So like, let's say even for some weird reason you did not do registration form, but you've done 5, so you can either do push to GitHub or registration form. You could go back and do registration form and still submit that, and that's fine.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I completed likes on Monday of this week,
Mhm.
and so that was like a couple days late beyond, or a
Yeah.
day late beyond the Sunday. So I just want to make sure it would still count towards
Yep.
the 90%.
Yep.
Okay.
Core assignments it's kind of a weird thing because we keep track, and that's where the probations come in, right? So we want you to stay in track, or else everybody would just not do it, and then like the last week try to finish, and then that doesn't work out. We've had students who've tried that, and you will never pass that. It's too much information for a week. So that's why we do the probation and the every other week being an official check-in. But yeah, you can, even if likes was turned in a little bit late, really just Wednesday is the deadline that you have to have all of these turned in.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Great question. Any other questions, friends?
I have a question.
Mhm.
Will said you guys keep track of our progress, right?
Yes, we do.
Yes, so that means you guys can, kind of help us, make sure that we're on track. Is that correct?
I'm not. Do you mean by like me telling you what assignments you've done? Is that what
Like,
you?
like we,
Sorry.
no, I was asking if we, is it possible for us to ask you guys whether we're on a good standing?
Oh, so yeah, I'm gonna get to that on Friday, and I'll just get to it now. On Friday, I will be sending out an email of your current status of what we've got. So if you are, and I will just say this is how many assignments I have. Out of 7, I'm showing that you're at blank, so 6 or 7 or 3 or whatever I'm currently showing by Friday, I will tell you that is your status. So that way you have the weekend, and it just kind of is a heads up of, hey, I need to send out, or I need to complete 3 or 4 assignments. So I'll give you your status on Friday. If you've gotten everything, if you're at 6 out of 7, if you are at if you're at 6 out of 7 core assignments, if you're at 7 or 6 or above discussion questions submitted, and you have a passing belt exam, then I'll say like, hey, congratulations, you are good to go. You're good to go. You can, congratulations, you did it, sort of thing. And if not, I'll say, hey, this is how many I'm going to need. Just as a reminder, you need to have 6 out of 7. You're currently at 4, so you need 2 more. Something like that. So if that's what you're asking, then yeah, I'm absolutely going to send that to you. That way, right? And you're not under the assumption of, oh no, I thought I was good and I wasn't. So I'll make sure that I send that out to you. I usually do that the Friday before, just to kind of give you guys plenty of time in case you have to catch up. Is that what you're asking, Franciscus?
Kind of. That's more than what I asked, but thank you so much.
Yeah, of course. Great. So I see. What if you wanted to fix an assignment? You can absolutely do that. You just go fix an assignment and then just re-upload it. That's fine. I will say, obviously, fix an assignment if you have the capacity to do that and you want to do that. If you submitted an assignment and like an actual attempt of an assignment, that still counts. So it doesn't have to be right, if that makes sense. Um, Obviously, like for your learning, you guys are paying a lot to come and do this. You want to make sure you do that as much as you want to gain as much information as you can from this. But even if it's wrong, that's not going to like not count towards your core. And so then all of a sudden you don't know, like if you gave it an actual try and we go through and see like, okay, is this a legitimate try, or did you just submit an empty file? Because if you do that, then that's part of our academic dishonesty, and that could be a bigger issue. But as long as it's a good try, you're welcome to go through and resubmit it. But either way, it's going to count as a core assignment submission. Am I going to be your teacher moving forward, Rita? I will not be your teacher moving forward. So you guys will get, depends on what language you're going into, whether it's Python or Marin or Java, you will have somebody else. So although we've been together for 6 weeks and hopefully it's been as good of an experience for you guys as it has been for me, I will not be your instructor moving forward. I know, sad eyes. Elena asked, our next class starts Monday, right? Will the instructor just email us over the weekend? Absolutely. So the next Monday, your next class will start. And so what will happen is on Friday, you will be moved over. Usually it's, I think we aim for like 3 to 5 p.m., somewhere in that window. We aim to move students into the next stack. Now, usually what that means is you will get an email from your instructor that's going to have all your information. So you'll get a file just like this that looks like it'll say Python or Mern or Java, whatever you're doing. And then you will get a new lecture room. You'll be moved from the Discord. So if you always, or if you know, just know that unfortunately, this is always the saddest part of classes, is our Discord channel will cease to exist. So if people are doing different languages, so if somebody's going from, from here, if you're doing just one stack, then you can do, from here to Mern, Java, or Python. So whichever your one stack is. If you go to 2 stacks, if it includes Python, we always need a Python first because it is sort of the best on-ramp for a 2 stack and or 3 stack. You'll always go to Python. But if you're a 1 stack and you're just like learning Mern, you're going to go straight into Mern. They're learning Java, you're going to go straight into Java. So unfortunately, I know it's so sad. You guys have been together for like 6 weeks, but you will break off if people are doing just 1 stack and maybe it's just Java or just Mern. You will break off. For all of those that are moving on to Python, you'll all be included into that. You might even have some new people as well, so that are maybe retaking Python or had to postpone, or there's lots of reasons why people might be joining. So it's always fun. Make sure you're networking. Make sure you're networking with people. Make sure you're networking with friends. Guys, share your LinkedIn. I promise you the best way to get a job is to know somebody. A little fun incentive is that when somebody refers you to a job, if you get hired, they get paid. Like I referred when I was at Twilio, I referred a friend, and they paid $3,000 because he got hired. It was the best deal of my life, right? Like my friend got hired on my team, and I got paid $3,000 for it. Rocked. It rocked a lot. So make sure you guys are sharing that. And I just say that the Discord will cease to exist on Friday. So you guys will be moved over in Discord to your new channels with your new instructors. So yes, Tuba, I will. Unfortunately, you won't see any pictures from my trip, but that's why I'm not teaching. I am grateful enough that Coding Dojo allows us, like once a year, we get an upskilling month where us as instructors are actually not instructing and we're learning, and it's a way that we can learn more languages or dive even deeper. It's just kind of we call it an upskilling month, which is not every company does that. So I'm really, really grateful. And so my upskilling month is next week, because part of that is I'll be out of the country for 2 weeks, which is going to rock. So, yeah. But yeah, you'll get an email on this Friday, and then everything will be moved in. So the 28th, and then eventually you'll be moved into your class. Now, sometimes I'll just say this, and I have been advocating that you guys should have access to the material ahead of time. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it's not until your actual class starts, which is the Monday. So your instructor should say in their welcome email, like, hey, you should have access to the class. And if they say that, then that means that you should be good to go. And you can start. And I would really encourage you to start on the material if you have access to it. If you don't, then it's just going to open up first thing Monday morning. Because I think the way they do it now is they do it by the stack start date, which is that Monday morning. But I would also encourage you, if it does not open up, please, please, please treat yourself on that weekend, on the 29th and the 30th. Like, do something kind for yourself, whether that's going for a walk or going to a movie and seeing Barbenheimer or whatever that is. Please make sure you treat yourself because you've had a good, get pho. Like, that's incredible. Go do something. Go do just something really small that you really like, right? Because you've been working really hard for 6 months. So treat yourself on that weekend, get good, fresh brain, and then go into it. Cool. Great. Any other questions on this? And what to expect, what I'm expecting of you, all that good stuff. And let's jump in. We've got 40 minutes, so we're not going to end early because we talked about the schedule. That's okay. We don't need to necessarily end early. Cool. So we want to talk about Git and GitHub. And I did put in Discord that if you wanted to follow along with us, then you were going to need to do two things. First off, you're going to download Git. And when you come here, it's going to look something like this. Now, based off of whatever operating system you're on, so obviously I'm on a Mac, it's going to automatically know. So it's not going to say like download Mac. If you're on a Windows, it should say download Windows. If for some reason it does say download for Mac, you could just say Windows build here, and it's going to do that. And you're going to want to make sure you download this. If you are downloading on Windows, when you go to download, it's going to ask if you want to install Git Bash as well. Git Bash, say yes. And that's going to allow you to, it's just basically a terminal that you can use that's going to be similar to mine. Instead of doing like command prompt or PowerShell, you can use Git Bash. And it's just a different terminal that you can use as well. But make sure you download it because it does work. Some terminals work better for languages than others. So great. So we want to make sure we download Git. But you might ask yourself, what on earth is Git? What the heck does that even mean? Well, Git, just by itself, is what we call a version control system. And so it allows you to basically create little snapshots or versions of your code as you're going along. So if we're thinking about this, let's say that I've got, let me pull up my annotation tools. Let's say that I've got this code, right? I have this folder here. We're going to call this, or in Git language, we call this repository. We call it a repository, right? And you can think about this just as a snapshot of our code. Well, what Git allows me to do is keep track of different versions as they change, right? If I go in and I add in a new button, I can save it, and now I save it as a different type, right? Each version. And let's say that I create this button, all is well. It's a Friday. I create it, everything works. Or I think everything works. I push it, and it goes live. And then on Saturday morning at 2 a.m., I get a message that says, hey, that new button you created has ruined everything. The entire site has crashed, right? Well, what the power of Git is that it allows us to keep track of versions. So let's say I'm going to say like button, right? So this is the version, that's the button. Let's say it broke everything. I can always revert back and say, okay, this is my stable build. You might hear it as like a stable build, right? I can revert back and then say, okay, at least for now, I've stopped the bleeding, right? I don't have this cool new feature of this button, but I can revert back to a stable build. So that way my website or my program is no longer broken. This is a really, really powerful tool, right? If you guys have ever written anything, I don't know how old or young you are, but if you've ever used, like back in the day, we used Microsoft Word. Right now we have like Word Online, and it sort of is version control, right? I could see all the different saves that I've had and when I saved it. But when I was in college, the way we had it is I would write a paper. It was a rough draft, but if I'm being honest, like ADHD, I would wait until like the day of to call it a rough draft. But I would write a rough draft, and then I would save it, and then I would go in and I would change it, but then I didn't overwrite it, so then I would say like final draft version 1. And then I go in and I change it, and then final draft version 2, right? And I had at the end of it, I had all these different versions, right? All these different random files, or resume updated and resume updated 2, or resume updated 3, right? I didn't just have a file that had the different versions of the resume that I've created. And so what Git allows us to do is do that with our code, right? That way, if I want to look back and say, okay, this used to have this functionality, how did I do that? Or, hey, this was stable back in the day, how did I do that? It allows me to keep track of all the different versions of my code. If everything works, great. If I add a new feature, great. And I can go and I can pick and choose and build some code. What's also nice is it allows us to create what we call branches. And so let me come back, I'm gonna make it a little bit smaller. Let's say that this is our code, right? This is our stable build. And this is what our user is seeing, right? Well, if I'm Facebook and I want to have a cool new feature, I want this code to still be working, right? I want this stable code. Let me write stable on top. I want my users to still be able to use this, right? I want all my different users to be able to use this. Cool. But I also want to increase my product, right? Because if I'm not adapting and I'm not changing in my product, well, then it's not ever going to get any better. So what Git allows us to do is create what we call a branch, or kind of just a copy, right? A copy of the same code. So that way, when I am building something new or testing something, I can just create this copy. My users are still able to see the stable build, and I can add in a bunch of new features. So I'm say feature 1, maybe feature 2, and maybe it's 3 features. Feature 3, cool. I've got all these different things that I can add in and change, right? I make sure I would test and say, okay, great. All my features are good to go. I want to roll this out. I've tested, I've done quality assurance. I make sure everything is a-okay. Well, then what I can then do is I can take that information and push it to my stable build. So it allows me to create what we call a branch. So this would be called our branch, which is just a copy of what I currently have. And then if I want to, after I'm done, I just push it to my stable build. And then my users get to see my new features, right? My new update. Now, realistically, it doesn't just look, it doesn't go kind of up and down like this. It doesn't really do that. What you can see is it looks a little bit more like this, where maybe I've got this main, this is my main, right? My stable build. And then I branch off, and maybe, I do a little bit of updates, but I'm good to go. I branch off, I create a new feature, and then I merge it on. And then now this part of my branch or of my code includes this new update. And maybe off this new update, I create another branch, right? That's got even more things. And then later on, I merge that. And then now this is my full on build. And so you can see that really it's just one linear line and a bunch of branches coming off of it and adding to this main portion. This is my stable build of my code. Cool. All at a high level, Git is just a version control system. Allows us to keep track of the different versions of my code. Cool. So you do need to download it. Once it's downloaded, we can use something like a GitHub. Now, GitHub is just an online version of, not GitHub, it's just an online way to manage your version control repositories. It's just an online version or way to manage your repositories. So here, GitHub, this is our class repository, and I've added different things, right? I've got 4 commits. These are all the versions I have. So I could go back to one of them, and this is just my class code, right? Doesn't have some of the things that we have in here. This just has week 2 and week 1. That's the original version, and I've updated certain things to now I have a mock exam. This is what's in here, right? I can go and look at all the different things. This is just a commit, but if I wanted to see the different versions, I could, right? I could always go back to all the various things that I've done, all of my commits, right? And allows me to also keep track of, well, what did I do? What did I add? who, and if you're collaborating, it says like who did what. It allows you to do that. GitHub is not the only version control system. Now it is a version control repository holder, like online version control. Git is your version control system. GitHub allows you to kind of host all of that online. There's other popular ones, other ones that you'll use as like for your company. So like Code Commit is Amazon's version of GitHub. That's one. If your company uses AWS, then you might put your code on GitHub. You're all still using Git, or sorry, on Code Commit, you're still using Git. Git is kind of universal, right? But the GitHub, or where you're hosting and have your repository stored online wise, they are, you can use multiple. You could use GitHub, you could use Code Commit. There's other ones like GitLab, bunch of different other versions of doing what GitHub is. GitHub is absolutely the most popular and the most powerful, if you will, because it's just got market share, right? Most people are using that. Cool. I'm gonna stop there. Are there any questions on Git or GitHub just for right now?
When downloading Git, it's showing me a bunch of links on here. Not sure which one to download.
By links, it should say, so like here, it should show you this. Is that what it's saying?
Yes, and I don't know which one to pick.
Are you on a Windows?
No, Mac.
Mac. Okay. So you could use, do you have Homebrew installed?
No idea what. No, I don't know.
So so I would follow this. So go to install Homebrew. If you're on a Mac, you're gonna run this. You're just gonna copy. So paste that in the Mac terminal. So copy this, go to your terminal, and you're gonna paste it. And this is gonna download Homebrew. Homebrew is just a package manager system that Mac allows in order for you to download things.
Okay.
So once you download Homebrew, then what you'll do is you'll go back and you'll just say brew install Git. So
Okay.
download Homebrew, and then it's going to download quite a few packages. And then Brew is going to be something you'll use all like other as well. So that's great. There's another one you could do Mac ports if you wanted, but I would say just stick with Homebrew. And then you just say brew install Git. So that should install it.
Install it. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. I also want to point out before we kind of continue, there is a great tool here. If you click on this Dojo Hall, it's going to take you here, right? This Dojo Hall portion that you guys, this is not something new to you. But if you go to events in the top right and then say Git, there's a lot of information that we have. So there's more breakdowns of videos for the basics. So if you're wanting more basics or wanting more work or another way for somebody to explain it, those videos are here. If you're wanting a more advanced session, you're saying, I want to learn about branching and forking, collaboration, which you're going to get to whenever we get to projects and algorithms at the end of the course. You'll learn a lot more about this because you're going to have to collaborate. So definitely don't need to worry about it now. But you can look here, and then there's some different sessions as well here that you can learn about branching and merging and forking and all that good stuff. So that's sort of our advanced ones. Now, the other thing to note is that while you are throughout the bootcamp, you can look at events and see where, let's try to find, Git, or here. Oh, event page. So if you go to this event page, you can see all the events, and then there's like a basics. So right here on the 19th, oh, so I guess today there was that's kind of weird how this is, but it's the 12th. So next week, if you wanted to, next Wednesday, there's a Git session at 1 p.m. in the lecture room 2 of Dojo Hall. And then they build this out. So like next August, if you wanted to attend, it'll be built out. But if you wanted to attend, TAs and instructors will put this on, or if there's a demo that you want to see next Friday or this Friday, you can do that. It's called a SaaS, software as a service. You could see all that information too. So here's some cool events that our TAs will put on that are free for you to obviously go to. And some videos or slide decks if you were interested in like all this information. So I just want to make sure you were aware of that. Okay. So once you download Git, you also need to sign up for GitHub. And what will happen is once you sign up for GitHub, you will have a profile, right? And so here's my profile. Here's what it looks like. And this is a great marketing tool for yourself. So for recruiters, they're going to look at how many repositories do you have? How often do you contribute? How many stars or projects or different repositories? This is a way that you can go just look at code, right? And it's pretty cool because it breaks down kind of your contribution activity, but also if I'm looking at repositories, it'll show each repository that I'm dealing with. So let's say that I am applying for a job in Python. What I could do is maybe they would be able to see this repository and they'd be able to look down and say, okay, 55.3% of this is Python. So maybe I can, if I'm using this as an example for assignments or for kind of projects that I've built, I might want to show this one. Right? I mean, this is 2 years old, so maybe something more recent, but you get the understanding, right? If I'm, because I've been teaching a lot of MERN lately. So if I were to go back and do something like that, if I was doing like MERN 2023 or February of 23, you can see that I did a lot of JavaScript over these couple of weeks. And all this code is here, right? And so you can see all sorts of different things if you're looking for code, if you're looking for the different aspects of it, which is pretty sweet. But you can come here and you can see all the code. It's lecture 1 in class, reach router practice, and then you can see all the different things. So that's what GitHub allows you to do. Now, there's a couple things in regards to GitHub that recruiters will like to see, though it is silly, I would agree. They like to see how many squares you have here. Now, it's the more you do, the lighter it goes, so the more contributions. And ideally, you'd have quite a few of these squares. Does having these squares mean you're a good developer? Absolutely not, right? It does not mean that you're a good developer per se. And if you don't have, right, I had a segment where I didn't have any squares to GitHub. It's because my company used code commit, right? And so I didn't even contribute to GitHub because it was just on a totally different thing. So it is not necessarily an indication of your experience, though recruiters don't really know that. And so they will want to see you push into GitHub. So that's why I say get used to contributing to GitHub now so that you can start getting these green squares and they can start seeing your activity. Cool. You can follow people and see their code, which is pretty sweet. Like if I were just to go to github.com, you could follow people and see if there's an online Python game. This is kind of, if you ever hear the word open source, it's like I can look and see certain things. So if I want to see this person's code here, cool. Like it's all about the research and how to do a bunch of stuff. So it's a pretty sweet place that you can add certain things in. Cool. Any questions so far? Okay. Well, what you'll have to do is, let's say you've got Git and you've created a GitHub account and you've gotten Git downloaded. What you'll first have to do is, actually, let's show you how we will do this, but you guys won't be able to do it yet. And then we'll have to work, maybe an office hour tomorrow, we can work on how to kind of get you guys going. Actually, no, I'm going to go the opposite. I'm going to get you guys set up now, and then an office hour, I can show you how to push to GitHub because it's super duper easy. but I want to make sure you guys are ready. So if you guys have the ability, follow along with me. Make sure you have Git downloaded and make sure you have a GitHub account. So once Git is downloaded, right, you have to make sure that you have the version that kind of matches what you're doing, matches your OS, sorry. If you got Mac or Windows or Linux, whichever it is, make sure you have that. Then you've got to configure Git. You have to make sure that whenever I'm here, right, and it says like who created this, if I am collaborating or if I'm doing something like that, I have to have an assignment of who is the one actually doing these actions, right? And so what we have to do is we have to configure some of our credentials. So what I will say is I'm going to type in git config dash global. That means no matter wherever this is, whenever I say git, I'm wanting to kind of globally say this. It's not locally, it's not just attached to a folder, it's not attached to a specific area, but throughout my entire computer. Then I want to say user.name. Then I want to say your username. So maybe it's just Will Calhoun. I'm not going to do this because I don't want to reconfigure all my stuff, but I would press enter and it would configure a username. So you're going to say git, right? If you don't have git downloaded, obviously this git keyword's not going to work. Config, so we're configuring, we're going to do it globally, saying anywhere on my computer, if I'm using git, this is the username I want to use. And this one is Will Calhoun or whatever you want to call it. Now, I would say don't use something like Dragon Slayer 54, but like do something professional in case somebody sees this. So, you know, first and last name or middle name is usually a good way. Don't necessarily need to say, especially don't say anything like derogatory or provocative because people will see it. And I get emails sometimes from people with emails that are like, dude, you should definitely get a new email. Cool. So first off, we do our name. Second thing we're going to do is we're going to get config -- global, because again, we're going to do it globally, user.email, and then you're going to put your email. This is going to configure the email associated with your Git account or your Git whenever you're up doing a repository. This is going to be the email associated with that. So remember, you do git config -- global user.name, git config -- global user.email, and then you pass in those informations, and that is going to configure your Git for you. Now, the second thing we've got to do is once we configure our Git, we have to go to our GitHub. And this is a newer thing, and this is built out in there's some videos on this as well. But you've got to go to GitHub and configure what we call a token. So back in the day, you used to be able to just use your GitHub password, and then it would allow you to connect the two. That is no longer the case. So what you need to do is you need to go to GitHub. You're going to come here, right, to this guy, and you're going to go to settings. You're going to come to your settings, and this is where you can change a bunch of stuff. So like your bio, this is a great thing to say, you know, this is who I am, whatever. I could do all of that information there. But you want to click on developer settings on the bottom left. I hope this doesn't give you my tokens. Okay, yeah. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna stop sharing just to make sure none of my security stuff is gonna be recorded. Nope. Okay, cool. Great. I'm gonna share my screen again. Cool. So what you're going to do is you're going to developer settings, and you're going to go to personal access tokens. And then in that, you're going to create a personal access token. Now, this token, just do tokens classic. And what this is going to do is basically give access and allow you to do specific things, right? So allow you to basically do anything on your GitHub. It's kind of your connection piece. This is your big thing. Now, usually, so what you'll do is you'll say generate token, and it's going to say generate new token. So this is repo scoped, or you could do general use. So I would say for right now, for what you're doing, general use will be okay. Cool. I'm going to say this is a test, and you will do an expiration date. So you can say how long you want it to be, no expiration, 90 days. Obviously, if you've got it for like 90 days or 100 days, that's better than no expiration. I think they even say like we don't expire or we don't do that, because if your token ever gets leaked, then people can have access to your account. So you do want to do it like 90 days, something like that. And then you give access to what do you want it to do. This is going to commit status. You kind of just want full control of private repos. You want to do, so let's say like deleting a repo. So you want to be able to delete stuff. User, you want, I think you can, you can go through and click all of these if you wanted. You wanted to manage Copilot or whatever it is, right? There's different things. If you're like, I don't know what this is, then you probably don't need it. You really just need this guy right here. It's like this repo deployment. I'm looking through full control of org teams. You don't necessarily need that. Public keys, repository hooks, user data. I'd say, yep, getting all user data. Read and write team discussion, enterprises, code spaces, Copilot, projects, full control of public user GPG keys. No, okay. So then you would say generate token. I'm not going to do it because it'll actually generate a token. And what it's going to do, actually, I guess I will, because this is just a test. And I'll just delete it. But what it will do is it'll generate a token, something like this. Test. Perfect. It'll generate a token. Now at this point, here is your token. This is only, so you make sure you save this token right here. You will never, once you leave this site, you will never see it again. You cannot reaccess it. You have to generate it again. So please make sure that you save it. So copy it, save it somewhere on your computer or in the cloud, or if you've got a password manager, save it there. And then you'll have access to it. So I'm going to say delete. I'm saying delete this token, but you'll have access to it. Perfect. So make sure you save it, because then when you are going to do your first push to GitHub, what you will need to do is you will need to, it's going to ask you for your token. You're going to have to paste that, right? It's going to say, oh, okay, it's not authorized. Can you paste it? And you're going to have to paste it. So just a heads up there. So that's what we did. Again, just as a reminder, what we did is we clicked here in our name. We went down to settings. We went all the way to the bottom left, developer settings, personal access tokens, token classic, generated a new token. The things that we really needed are repo and user. And that's it, right? Generate token. Because it allows you to do, different things to your repository. Cool. Once we have all that, I know that's kind of a lot of setup. We've configured our settings. We've done all that. We generated our token. Then we need to configure our credentials. So what we can do is we can go into our terminal and we could say something like git config dash global. And we say credential dot helper store. And then when we do this, we can then say echo, and we're going to say HTTPS :// and there's a whole video on this too. You'll have this video and you'll have other videos as well. And you're going to do your username. So whatever your username is for GitHub, So I'm going to say your username here, but obviously fill this in. Don't say your username, fill it in with your username. Then you're going to say your token at github.com. So right here where it says your token, that is the token we just created at github.com, caret, and then we say tilde slash git dash credentials. This is a lot. This is the only time you're going to have to do that unless your token expires and you're going to have to update it, right? So you say echo your username, whatever your username is, your user token at github.com, caret, tilde, slash, no space in between, dot, get credentials. And this is connecting the two, right? This is giving you access to be able to do things on GitHub. So once all that is done, again, lots of setup, I fully know. Once all that's done, we can actually push to GitHub. We got 8 minutes. We can definitely do that. What we're going to do is I'm going to say, I'm going to create a new repository, right? I could do it on, I personally like to do it from my terminal, first and foremost. And then I'll show you why, and then we'll show you the other way we could do it. So I'm going to say WF, right? This is my web fundamentals. Actually, I want to go all the way back to TD. Let's go to, I'm going to go to my desktop, and I'm going to mkcd. This is making a new directory and seeding into it. We talked about this in office hour. If you're confused on what mkcd is, it's a function I created. And I'm going to say GitHub test. So I'm making a new folder called GitHub test. Now, what I need to do is I need to initialize a repository. I need to say Git, I need to tell Git, hey, I want you to keep track of this current version, right? Even if it's, I'll say touch index.html, right? I have at least one file in there. Now, if I want to initialize a repository, I say git init, and you can see that it says initialized empty Git repository in, and then it tells you where it's at. Cool. Now to add my files, I could say git add. And again, if you don't have Git downloaded, whenever you say Git, it's going to say, I don't know what that means. If I say space dot, that means I want you to add all the files. I want you to add everything there. I only have one file, so this will work. If I had a bunch of files, but I only wanted to, if I had 2 files and one of them was not done, then I could say git add and then the file name, and it'll just add specifically that file. So let's say I had a style CSS and I don't want to push it to GitHub yet or something for some reason. I could just say the file name and I don't have to do add space dot. In this case, I'm going to say git add space dot. Perfect. One thing that's not on the platform or not on sort of the GitHub practice is you could do something called git status. And what this will do is this will tell you the status of, okay, no changes yet. I don't have any commits. We're going to talk about a commit in a second. But hey, I've got a new file called index.html. And when it's green, that means it's been added and we're good to go. Cool. So we have created a repository. We've added the files, but you can kind of think about it as whenever we create an index.html file and we write a bunch of code, but we haven't saved it yet, right? We've got that little white dot in our VS Code. Well, in order for us to save it to Git and say, okay, officially, I want you to timestamp, this is what I want you to keep track of, right? We've said, hey, I have a repository I need you to keep track of. And we're saying, hey, I need the first screenshot or, kind of screenshot of what we're doing. I say git commit -m. This M is for a message. And so I'm going to say added HTML file. This is just the message I want to add. This is usually a description of what you did. So, fixed button bug or added shading to button, whatever you did, right? You can see that. Once I finish this, it has a quotation mark. Once I finish this, it says, okay, there is one change, create mode, index.html. Cool, we are good to go. On our Git side, we're fully done. Git has said, I have taken a screenshot. I know what I'm doing. Now we need to connect it to our repository on GitHub. So what we do is we go to new, and I'm going to say GitHub test. That's my repository name. You can give a description. You could add a README. A README is just a file to kind of explain what you're doing. You don't have to have that. But you can, like if you create a project or a code that you want others to use called open source, right? Where your code's just available. You can say like, oh, here's how you use this, or here's what this is about, or whatever. So you give it a name. You shouldn't have, I'm part of multiple companies, and so, and my own personal, and so you shouldn't have an owner here. It should just be by default yours. But if you have multiple things, if you have your own personal company and a personal stuff, you can do that as well. But you can click on if it's public, meaning that anybody can see your code, right? If I am able to navigate to your profile, I can see it. Or private means that only you and the people that you choose that are collaborating can see your code. That's what a lot of companies will do, right? To make sure it's private. And so that way only their developers see their code. But then once I'm done, I just say create repository. Did I click on it? I did. It's waiting. I'm not sure what's going on here. GitHub test is available. I took that. Please choose it. Oh. Try this again. Cool. All right. Quick repository. It's doing some thinking. Cool. Now that we've created our repository, I can either create a new repository on the command line. This is if we haven't already gone through this step of adding and initializing, it's cool because it'll tell us to do that here, right? I get a init, I do add, I add a README, I commit. This is our first commit to this branch. We're moving it from master to main, and then we remote add in. Now, I like to we've already initialized our repository. We've already committed. We're good to go. So I like to just do this, right? Like I don't really follow this. I just always initialize on my own, and then I just do these last three. So the first thing you do is you add remote origin, meaning that I'm connecting the repository on my computer to this specific repository on GitHub. This is really important to not mess it up, because it can kind of become quite a pain if you do. So what I do, even to this day, is I just copy and paste it. Now, Windows, I don't think you can paste, or it's a little bit harder to paste in your command prompt, but you can Google how to paste, or Christina, if you know how to paste, that'd be helpful. But if there's no
Using your
error,
mouse helps.
I'm sorry, your mouse.
For Windows, yeah, just use your mouse for the
Okay,
copy and paste.
cool. Great. So then we added this, we're good to go. So I did my first one. These ones aren't necessarily as big of a deal, but I still just copy and paste. Git branch main, and then git push u origin main. Yep. And then this last one, I just say git push u origin main. Now, this last one, again, what we're doing is we're connecting our repository, we're moving it to main, and then we're saying, cool, anytime I push, I want to go to main. And so now we see, great, we've added to GitHub from main to main. And then here, if I refresh this, you can now see my code. I've got my index.html. From my index.html. And if I want to, this is the last sort of thing, if I were to open this up, or if I were to say touch style.css, now I've added something else, right? I have an index.html, I have CSS. So if I want to update my code here, I do not have to go through. It's a lot easier than what we just went through. When I update my code, I say git add I don't need to reinitialize because it's already initialized. So git add space dot, git status. I'm adding my CSS file. Git commit dash m added CSS file. And then now all I have to do is once I commit it, all I have to do is say git push. That's what that last line was doing. We're saying, hey, anytime I say git push to main, I get push. And so now if I refresh, I now have my style CSS. That's it. That's all you got to do. Anytime you want to increase or change it, you just you add, even if there's deletions, right? You still add everything. You commit it, deleted the style file, push origin main, and then it will update and connect these two repositories. Okay, and stop there. We're exactly at time. Any questions on what we just went over? We went over a lot of stuff. I know that there's a lot of commands. I can make sure that I put these in a file or in Discord for you, but are there any questions on what we just did? Source. Yeah, so many LMAO. Okay, so for these next couple office hours, let's make sure that we connect. Sorry, I just drank water and went down the wrong hole. I'll make sure we connect. I'll put all of this stuff in GitHub right now, or in Discord right now. So that way you guys have access, like every single step that we did. And then we'll go from there. Any other questions? I know that your brains are probably fried, but we'll definitely practice tomorrow. Yeah, Christina, way to go. So Adam said, what about a Git GUI? You're welcome to use a Git GUI. I personally don't. But if that is easier for you, then you totally can. Okay. Any other questions? Just don't forget about it. It's very funny. Okay. Well, that's all I got for you guys today. I'll stop the recording, and I hope you guys have a wonderful, wonderful night.